Aaron, it's always good to spend some time with you. Thanks so much for being on today. We were talking a little about some of the elements of how do you turn around a underperforming team or an underperforming organization. I think a lot of sales leaders can sometimes come into situations where maybe they inherit a team that's not doing well, or perhaps our team stops doing well. What do you do in those circumstances?
Yeah, to me, this is a really important topic for sales leaders. Some sales leaders are just coming into a role, right? You're just coming into a company or a role, and you look at you look at your sales structure in your organization, and they're underperforming, they're not doing well, and you were brought in. Or you're in a situation where you have some attrition on your team, or you have some turnover, and all of a sudden you're underperforming. So, what I generally like to do is just start with a SWOT analysis, which I think is great. So, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? When it comes to strengths, what are we really good at? Weaknesses, where are we struggling? What am I not seeing? Where are my blind spots? And opportunities, what are our opportunities for success? And threats, what internal and external threats? Because there are both. Do we see that are inhibiting us, right, from really getting to where we need to be? So to me, doing an initial assessment of your sales organization is a great place to start. Right, so that once we get those answers, we can analyze that and then come up with a really good game plan. And so, generally when I've interviewed for roles in the past, it's like, what are you going to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days? The old 30, 60, 90-day plan. I'm like, well, I have some ideas, but honestly, I need to get in and talk to some people. I'd really like to interview some of the leaders and some of the reps that are in the organization and ask questions like, what do you like about the company? What don't you like? Rate your experience here. What barriers are you running into that are keeping you from being successful? Do you like who you work for? What's your wish list? What does the company need to do to be more successful? Is it marketing? Is it the price? Is it value? That type of thing. So I think that those are things that often come into play early on.
That's super powerful, Aaron. I love how you called out, I got to spend time with people because I think we've fallen into that rhythm of, we think we know how we're going to go to market, and that's super, super important. But there's a X factor here, and it's people, right? My favorite story ever of turning around an underperforming team years ago, I was at another organization. I ran a call center, and there was an underperforming group. And I believed wholeheartedly in the purpose of this group. I mean, they were calling on our existing advertisers and, making sure that they walked through their program, seeing what was working, try to make enhancements, and ultimately try to upsell. Well, they were not doing well. They were performing at about 78% to goal the month prior to a decision being made of, hey, do we keep this project going? And it would have changed, a lot of people's lives. It would have sent, a lot of these people that were in this group back into doing a different role. And also, obviously, our existing customers are super important to us. So we saw the value in the team, but I remember vividly sitting around the table and, them discussing like putting this group on the chopping block and ending the project. And I said, hey, I'll take them. I'll volunteer, right? I was in my 20s and I thought I could do anything. I was wrong, but in this case, it was a fun experience. And so I took the group. They were under my umbrella the following month, and I did exactly what you said. It was spending time with people, understanding what's working, what's not. And I think the other key element was, if you're walking into a scenario where a team isn't performing, the last thing you want to do is do what I think a lot of times they expect you to do, which is just making massive changes off the cuff without understanding anything about these folks. I even walked in, met with them, and, I think they were all kind of expecting me to just make some knee-jerk changes. But it's, hey, we're going to make some changes together. We're going to spend time. We're going to understand this because I believe in this team. I believe in why this team exists. But we're going to make some changes, and we're going to do it together. So I'm going to spend this week with you. I'm going to listen. You're going to tell me what's working, and we're going to make all the decisions as a team. And at the end of the week, we'll kind of put some new rules into place. And I think what you hit on is so important. You got to understand, like, what is their why? Why are they here? Why did they sign up for this project? What are some of the changes? And there has to be some give-gets, right? There has to be some concessions. I don't want to just make drastic changes, but I want to make sure that they understand, look, your team will cease to exist if we don't make some changes. So we believe in why we're here. Let's do this as a collective. And we ended up cutting some of the time in between calls. We changed some of the focuses around our key metrics, and just we started having some fun. And that first month, we hit 141% the goal.
Wow.
That was 13 years ago. That team still exists today. So that was one of my favorites. Story. But I'd love to hear, Aaron, of any examples that you have that you'd love to share. What were some key learnings? And I don't purport to always get it right. I could just tell you some stories of times where I came in and made some poor decisions, but I'd love to hear some experiences that you have as well.
Yeah, so I think it's a great place to start, is just talking about some areas that I failed in the past, and so to me, I like change. It's hard for me when my people that are working under me that don't like change, because I think, to me, innovative and being progressive and changing is a very important part of culture and what you're doing and adapting as a sales organization, right, and to the marketplace and what's happening. But that being said, sometimes I'm guilty of, coming into a role and doing too much too fast. Change is needed, but the amount of change. But I've also had leaders that have done that too, where I have a new leader and it's like, you're drinking from a fire hose because there's so much change so fast. We all want to come in and make sweeping changes, and we want to look good and we want to project ourselves and we want to see a dynamic turnaround. Unfortunately, the pace with which we do it and the amount of things that we do actually makes things worse. We're putting more on people's plates. They can't digest the change. I've learned over the years to keep things simple. So when I make some changes, I make a few changes, just like to your point, just a few things right away that they can really grab on and hold on to. Now, here's the thing about change that I've also made the mistake and found out the hard way. People have a tendency to buy into change when they have feedback into that process, right? So going back to our point of building a relationship with those people, if you have sales leaders that report to you, talking to your leaders, really getting to understand what makes them tick, what don't they like about the company, what don't they like about working here. I'd really want to know that. If you were going to change anything, what would you change? Rate it scale of 1 to 10, what your current experience is, that type of the thing. And when you get that information, then you can go back and say, all right, folks, a lot of you said X, you'd like to see change. So would I. Here's what I'm proposing we do. What do you guys think about this? Yeah, we like that. And you work on it, like you said, with them, you collaborate. They'll buy into change. What I've found is when I come in and say, okay, guys, we're going to do this. And then they're like, I don't think it's going to work. We've been here longer than you. It's not going to work. Well, why isn't it going to work? Well, you have this barrier and this barrier that you didn't think about. Okay, so I think that's really important as we're, identifying, how we can make some sweeping change. Change is a really tough word for a lot of people.
Love that. And you're spot on. That's sometimes the thing that we're the most fearful of is change. You develop a comfort level with ambiguity. I think the last couple of years have done that for a lot of us as well. I mean, it's been forced change. But, at the end of this, we got to be very mindful. We're building and sustaining a culture. And it all comes down to people and process. And it's also about not having drastic pendulum swings. One of the key elements is, keeping a steady hand on the wheel in these times. I often like to say, when you're up, you ride the wave, but when you're down, be sure you behave, because you've got to stay true to the people and process. And so I do have a very vivid memory also of one time where my team was not performing overly well years ago. And, I reacted and responded the wrong way. And some of it was because I was getting heat from above, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's the key element. So we have to be very mindful of wherever we are in the leadership spectrum, because the way that we are addressing this with people that work for us, if there are additional direct reports, they may react and respond the exact same way in kind. And so I think it's so important that everybody that we're touching in the sales ecosystem, that we are seeking to understand, that we're, kind of meeting them where they are. And it isn't about using a metric to force change or to say you're not doing enough or whatever it is. Data diagnoses. It helps us to look at where the process may need a tweak. It's not drastic changes that are required in most situations. It's, it might be small tweaks to the process that make all the world, all the difference. And so In
Yeah.
the scenario that I gave earlier, we encouraged betterment committees. I wanted players only meetings to be transpiring. I wanted my
Yep.
team to be meeting without me so that they could socialize how they were feeling, how they were thinking about what changes needed to be made, and then they could funnel that up to me. I didn't need to be a part of that process. It's a lot like parenting. You've got to put a foundation in place for trust and transparency where they feel comfortable sharing with you. They know that you've got their best interests at heart. That's what's going to ensure that they're part of that decision to make positive change. And ultimately, that is what is going to lead to success, not making knee-jerk reactions, not telling people they need to sell more widgets.
Well, you said something that I wanted to hit on, which was culture. Right. So when you come in, so, going back to our original premise point of what do you do with an underperforming sales organization? Well, first of all, I like to always examine the culture. What culture exists? So if I'm coming into a team or a situation, I definitely want to analyze that culture. Sometimes I found that over time, even for me, my culture can go awry or things can happen, like you said, and, the culture begins to suffer. So, I always ask questions like, what kind of team building activities are we doing to facilitate culture? Are there territory conflicts? What conflicts exist within the team or within the organization? Do people care about one another? Right? Does sales leadership add value to the reps, or are sales leaderships just kind of like bean counters, just managing numbers, and they're really not adding much value? Are sales leaders managing, or are they leading? What's the culture there? What kind of career pathing exists for the employees? Right? What kind of personal development exists for the employees? So those types of things to me is where culture comes into play. What I've been able to do and where I've learned over the 24 years of leading sales teams is to create a culture where people just love one another and care for one another.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate right now where I am to have a team of 8 individuals that they genuinely do love and care for one another. And it makes it fun to come to work every day. And there's a culture of accountability that is there as well. So, a culture of winning. How do you start winning? By just stop losing. All right. So it's really profound. It's very simple, but winning is a contagious attitude. So that's kind of the culture we've created, in my team is an attitude of winning, building a championship sales team that we recruit a certain caliber of player that's a part of our culture, that we're a family, the team building aspect of what we do. So I think the culture plays into it. And I'd love to hear your take on that as well, because I think it's just such a key part of turning around. There's got to be a cultural flaw generally, I found, not always, but usually the case of some kind of a cultural flaw.
So important, Aaron. And, I'm going to go back to even something that you started us off with, which was looking at the SWOT analysis. Really, anytime that you're looking at two elements, if you've got an underperforming team, it's likely you have a disconnected team. They're not connected to the mission. Maybe they're not feeling connected with each other or with you. They're not feeling like we're at the pulse of what matters to them. I've seen it in the past where it's so easy too for sales managers to get caught up in so much of the daily minutia that they take their eye off the ball in really investing in the things that matter, the people and the process, the fundamentals. And when that happens, then, people often find a comfortable way of mediocrity or a comfortable way of failing. And if you have an entire team operating like that, guess what is going to happen? Your results will speak that story. So
Right.
again, it goes back to what you talked about. We've got to understand the strengths of our team, because ultimately you want to figure out, how do I expand the impact of my players, right? How do I get the strengths of Joe and Mary and Betsy and Bob? How do I get their strengths? How do I replicate them across the team? Because if somebody's great at something, chances are, without taking food off somebody else's table, you can get them to share these best practices. You can recognize them publicly. You can encourage that sharing and that best practice sharing. There's another side to this too. In every organization, there's going to be things that you probably would change or that you don't necessarily like. I encourage my team to, and I want them to meet and talk about those things that aren't working, and to feel like they can trust me with that intel, even if it's overall anonymous, and you've got one spokesperson that's able to relay that to me, or multiple spokespeople, because ultimately, what's going to go a long way with your people is when they see that you are willing to relay this message on up the chain further. I meet very often with my leadership. I convey all of the feedback that I'm getting from my team, pro and con. I think it's important to make sure that we're calling out, hey, these are great things. These are the things that if we could change, we would change. These are the things where there are issues. But if your team sees you doing those types of things, even if you can't get everything changed or you can't address absolutely everything, they see the effort that you're making. They see the investment that you're making in them. And if you remove blockers, and you remove all the legitimate barriers to success. There's a reason I word it that way, because it's not about excuses. Everybody, it's easy to come up with an excuse for why you're not giving your best. But a leader exists to remove those legitimate barriers to success and give their team what we agreed on when we signed up for this, right? You came, you agreed to be the person that you pledged to be on interview day. And as your leader, I'm going to give you the foundation, the tools, the training, the resources to be successful. And somewhere along the line, probably somebody's going to fluctuate a little bit in how good they're doing at that contract. And that's why we have to have mutual accountability. I need to hear from my team what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and vice versa. I need to make sure that we are continually revisiting that contract throughout the course of our relationship. And if we do that and we find ways to have fun and recognize each other and get that culture of winning, I love that you said that, that's what's going to make us win.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. And to add on top of that, I think too, so, last time you and I talked, we used some sports analogies. So I equate a sales team. We got to throw one in here, right?
Yes.
This wouldn't be a podcast without it.
That's true.
So to me, building a championship sales team, like that should be a title of a book, and maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it. Building a championship sales team. What do you do? Well, in college football, I think there's a great parallel here. Right? What makes Alabama and Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State so great year in and year out? They're recruiting talent. They're getting 4- and 5-star players. So, and then they're coaching and developing those players. So not only do they have talent, they're coaching them up. And then they're taking those 3 stars that they have and they're coaching them up in the sales arena. So oftentimes I want to recruit from my team those 4- and 5-star players. They're hard to get. They're hard to find. Okay, but you want to go after them. And so how good of a recruiter are you as a sales leader when you're trying to turn around an underperforming sales organization? The first thing I've always said when I come in is, I'm only going to be as good as the people that I surround myself with and hire and the talent that I bring in. And I need sheer talent, because I could teach a lot of stuff and coach and develop, but I'm really looking for seasoned individuals or people that have that talent that can add it to the organization. So I find that when I recruit well, and I bring in the right type of people, then coach them up, that I find that I can have a high-level championship team. The other thing is, when you come in, sometimes it's easy to kind of want to come in and start chopping people and moving people out. I found that that's really not a good thing, because it shows as a leader that I really don't care about people, and I start shoveling people out. I evaluate everybody, but I really want, sometimes for some people, they just have bad morale. They've lost some confidence. They can be turned around, through coaching and development. You can take the existing players that you have and make them really good if you're a good coach. So I think too, the key to being a successful leader in an underperforming sales is, how well do you coach? How well do you develop your players and your team? It's not always about just replacing everybody. I mean, listen, this post-COVID world, finding talent is so hard.
Yeah.
So what I found is I want to make the best with what I've got, right? Without just chopping people. Can we turn these people into being A-player performers? Where are they deficient? So really attacking those skill sets. In the meantime, if I have someone that isn't going to make it, recruiting and filling that spot with A-level talent. So I just see that parallel there. And what I found is that it's true. If you recruit well and you coach well, you're going to win championships. You're going to crush your quotas.
I hope people watching this understand that that's the mentality you've got to have, is that you've got to be able to look at your team and understand, the value of investing in them and building a bench and getting people promoted. I want everybody on my team to get promoted. And I think a lot of leaders, or managers, don't look at their team that way. They think, well, I don't want my top performer to get promoted. But guess what? If all your people get promoted, people are going to want to work for you. And that's
right.
The key element. I remember years ago, I was competing in a call center environment with another gentleman, right? He believed that getting rid of a lot of his low performers was the way to move his numbers up. And so that was his mentality, right? Mine was, I want to get everybody as high on the sales charts as humanly possible. And I had we did these drafts when people would come out of training class, right? So we did this draft, and I wound up with somebody actually that he knew and had brought into the company, but didn't want. This was a person that was like ranked last in the training class. So I met with this person, and we started to develop, like, why was he here? What was success looked like to him? And the guy just wanted to feed his family. He wanted a better paying job, and so I could respect that. Sales is a profession that pays well. We mutually developed this script that was in his voice and achieved all of the key things that we needed to achieve in a call, because he was having struggles getting through all of the sales, motions on each call, right? His first quarter, he won Fortune 500. Top 5% of all sellers in the company.
Wow.
And it goes to show that, look, if you got here, you earned the right to be where you are. It's my job as a leader to make sure we take it as far as we can. And we never write anybody off, but we plug in and we understand, like, look, what does success look like to you, and how can I help you be more successful? It's not me telling you to read this in my voice, read the script I wrote. It's how do we craft this together? If you craft your winning game plan as a team, you're going to get the buy-in of your team, and more often than not, you're going to be successful. Winning and losing, it's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
But I've learned some of my greatest lessons from losing. I win because of those lessons learned.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've said, oftentimes I've lost more in my sales career than I've won.
Yeah.
I've lost positions, I've lost roles, I've interviewed for jobs that I didn't get, right? And because I've lost, it's the reason I'm successful. So when you think about that, if I'm only winning, 30, 40% of the time, I'm losing more than I'm winning. I'm constantly learning. It sharpens me and makes me better. Very few people are winning 70, 80% of the time. Maybe they are. Okay, but I agree with that premise, and I think that when it comes to an underperforming sales organization, we also have to take into account, right, is that you mentioned it earlier, sales process. Right, so there's two things that really that I also wanted to add in here, was sales process and compensation modeling.
Yeah.
So I've also found that those two things are broken in an underperforming sales organization. Sometimes mind can get off track, and you have to regain it. What's the sales process? Is sticking to that. So when I come into an organization, I want to see what that is. Walk me through, how many recognized needs meetings do you have, and your needs analysis, and do you have product demonstrations? What do you do? What's the next step? What's the next step after that? Engaging the aptitude around that sales model for those reps. Are they sticking to that? Are you skipping steps? Where you're really not evaluating and asking enough questions, going in depth, listening really, really well to what the problems are. So generally, you can find a breakdown in processes there. And then the second thing too, the compensation modeling. I've also come into organizations where it's like, what, you mean you capped the compensation? What? What do you mean? You hit 110% and you're capped? Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I want them to hit 180% of their plan. I want them to hit 220. Can we think about this differently? Can we work this way? Can we try this? Or, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Rep, what do you think would be great with your comp plan? Like, what would motivate you even further? Is to add what elements, and try to come up with a compensation plan. Because I've also found in my career that reps sell to, and leaders as well, to the comp plan, not to quota.
Yeah.
I want to tie the comp plan to quota so that I get the quota result, but they're going to maximize the use of their comp plan. So if there's not synergy between the quota and the compensation plan, I can find a breakdown where they underperform in certain areas. So if I wanted to focus on selling a certain product, I want to build that into the comp plan where it's rewarding to them so that they're doing it the right way. So I think a couple other things to add on that note, of all the things we've discussed, there's so much here. It's a big topic.
It really boils down at the end of the day to people and process and controlling the controllables, those variables like comp plan and like some of the parameters of their role. I think if you really understand those well, you give yourself a better probability of success. Aaron, this was phenomenal. Thank you as always. I always enjoy our chats, and you've given some phenomenal things for us to be thinking about today as we go out and develop a winning sales culture. So thank you.
Thanks, Carson. Really enjoyed it.
Always. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds great.